Hello, my name's Ben.
And my name's Josh.
Welcome back to FPL graduates. Welcome back to another video. We are just about getting past that double game week straight into a blank game week on FPL. Loads of managers are going to be free hitting this week, myself and Josh both included. We've got our brains together and put together a bit of a free hit team that we think if you have the backbones to this team, you will get a green arrow this week.
Okay, then, yeah, so starting off in goal, we're going with Matt Sells. Obviously, there's a lot of debate as to who you can pick in defence for this week. Obviously, my team reveal is going to be quite interesting in terms of the defence, so make sure you check that out when it does get released on Thursday. Sells obviously playing for Forest. They were probably quite unlucky and lucky to not keep a clean sheet against Tottenham. They defended really well, but did concede quite a high amount of XG, over 2 in that game. Obviously, Brentford just come off a really high scoring game against Brighton. It'll be an interesting one. I think both teams need to win. Obviously, Forest to stay in the top 5. Brentford actually have an outside chance of finishing in a Conference League place, which is massive for a club like them. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, Forest in general defensively are really, really solid. What's your thoughts on that Forest defence and in general Matt Sells for this week, Ben?
Yeah, I think the point ceiling is there for sales this week in terms of the potential of up to a double digit haul. Just based on the number of saves that he usually makes in the game is relatively high. Of course, Forest defensive numbers not like the best statistically, but if you look at it sort of from an objective view, like they haven't actually conceded that many goals in the last 15 games really, but the stats don't back that up, so to speak. So almost bucking that trend, and that's largely down to sales as well, and the good defensive work that Forest do. They do concede high volumes, but the XG does rack up eventually. So I'd say yeah, he is a definite good pick. There's probably like 3 or 4 decent options that you could go for here. And Sells, in my opinion, is probably the one with the highest potential point ceiling.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, Jose Sarr's on the bench. They've got Leicester at home this week, who really are struggling to score goals. You go Bernd Leno with Fulham. Even Nick Pope for Newcastle against all the relegated sides pretty much at this stage of the season. So yeah, there's plenty of options in goal. You can obviously pick and choose. This is by all means not the perfect free hit. But yeah, obviously that's the best thing about it, is that everyone will have their own individual team, and despite there being quite a lot of similarities, I don't think teams will really be the exact same. Going into the defence, then we've got Ait Nouri. Obviously carries good attacking threat. Leicester at home, you expect a clean sheet for Wolves this week, given the fact that Leicester have only scored, what was it, in that game against Brighton a couple of weeks ago now. Didn't score against Liverpool. I thought defensively, though, Leicester did look a lot better against Liverpool than what they had done in previous game weeks, saying that, still conceding loads of chances. There's not really much to play for them other than pride at the moment, and to be honest, they haven't really been playing for that in quite a long time. Ryan Sessegnon is up next. Obviously, he's been playing out of position compared to his FPL position of a defender. He's been playing right wing for the last 3 games. He's got starts. He's got 4 attack and returns in his last 5 games as well, with 2 of those off the bench. He could be a really nice differential if he does get the start against Southampton. Harry Wilson is close to a return, we're hearing. But for me, I think he sort of played his way into the team, and I'd be shocked to see him drop, to be fair. Came off relatively early against whoever they play at the week. I think it was Chelsea, but it was actually a substitution error in terms of the linesman or the full official put up the wrong number, and he came off the pitch, and it just wasn't challenged basically. So bit rogue as to sort of why his minutes aren't as high last week, but I think if you did own him, he kept his clean sheet due to that. And then Kieran Trippier is last. Obviously, you can probably have any Newcastle defenders between him and Livramento for me in terms of probably the best. Obviously, Trippier does carry set piece threat, which is massive, but Livramento from open play does carry high attacking threat as well. What's the thoughts on all those 3 defenders, Ben, and anyone else that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think targeting the promoted and sort of to be relegated sides is going to be the play here from a defensive and offensive standpoint, in my opinion, and this just falls right into it. With Ait Nouri playing Leicester, he's got that attacking threat. In fact, all the defenders that we do mention have attacking threat, and I think this is a week to attack rather than sort of play safe with the minute security. Just go ahead and just get as many players you think will get attacking returns as possible, because you're going to have, if you're on a free hit, that bench to fall back on just in case, although it's going to be highly unlikely just given the unlimited transfers, and you're going to be able to sort of get all the information ahead of the deadline as well. So yeah, really like Aitnuri. Sessegnon's a really interesting one. I think he's really a great value pick and will be sort of something that differentiates between those that free hit this week and those that meticulously plan transfers to not free hit this week. That's going to be one of the main differences, is those Fulham players. And then, yeah, like I said, I think a Newcastle defender is going to be pretty key going into this game week. I think you could take your pick on Trippier, Livramento, either or. Are going to sort of work quite well. The budget constraints aren't so tough on this free hit, because you're only really going to go for maybe one premium option just because of how the fixtures have fallen. So you can afford, if you want to go to Trippier. Okay, so moving on into the midfield, I'm going to touch on Luis Diaz and Mohamed Salah. First, of course, they could wrap up the Premier League title. So this could be the last week that we talk about the same Liverpool 11, almost to speak. And Arne Slot, once the title's wrapped up, could end up starting rotating. We just don't know yet. He might start planning ahead to next season. And Luis Diaz and Salah could come out quite well against Tottenham, who are so indifferent. They concede a lot of goals. They've lost a lot of games. It's the most times ever that a team has lost in the Premier League by one goal. I think they've lost it 15 times, something like that. So I do see a fairly high scoring game at Anfield, and I do see Diaz and Salah sort of getting in on the action. Spurs haven't been the greatest defensively. And we can almost talk about the same with Iwobi and Southampton. Of course, if Sessegnon's playing on that right wing, the defensive frailty is on that side for Southampton. If Sessegnon doesn't end up playing right wing, there's every chance Iwobi could. We just don't know yet. But he is, again, a decent option. I'd definitely be looking at one Fulham attacker to get that game week. And then a little bit of a punt, really. And it's strange to say that this season, Anthony Gordon, coming back from his injury or suspension, hasn't quite got back into the team yet. He hasn't quite got back into the team yet, just I think due to the form of Barnes, etc. If there's going to be one game that he's going to build up 60, 70 minutes in, I'd anticipate it being in this Ipswich game. Remember, Newcastle still have a lot to play for, so tripling up is probably essential at this point for the Newcastle assets. And then, of course, on the bench, we've got Mbeumo, who's a really good option in himself. Of course, I think with any free hit, you either go with Sales or in Mbeumo. I wouldn't recommend going with both. You've got to basically decide, do you think Brentford are scoring? Do you think Forest are conceding? And that's the coin flick that you're going to have to go with. So Josh, that's the midfield. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with the points on Liverpool. One more thing to add in with that is obviously Tottenham have the Europa League semi-final first leg. What would it be? A few days later against Bodo Glimt, and they will have 100% focus on that just because it's the best route that they have into the Champions League still. So yeah, for me, I think that's a very good fixture to attack. I'd even be tempted to go triple up. Where you go on that triple up is totally up to you. For me, I think I'd prefer a third attacker rather than a defender. Just because with Trent, I'm not that 100% on a start at the moment. I know he obviously came off the bench and scored against Leicester, but I still think that Conor Bradley will probably start. They've got no reason to just throw him back in with Conor Bradley playing, just as well in that time. Iwobi, like you said, I think having a Fulham attacker is going to be important. Obviously, Southampton. I'd say they've actually improved a little bit since Juric has gone out. Obviously, they got that draw against West Ham. They're 1 point, I think it is, away from matching the Derby record. So with Southampton, they do sort of have that to play for, to not be the worst team in Premier League history. So it should be an interesting one. Fulham, though, equally have obviously European places to play for, so it's not going to be on the beach sort of game for them. Gordon's the interesting one. I think you can't really guarantee 90 minutes for any of the Newcastle midfielders, and that's what makes it so interesting. For me, if I was going to pick one, I'd probably pick Harvey Barnes, just because when we have seen Gordon introduced, it has been for Murphy last week. I think Barnes also played the 90 the week before against United. So, yeah, it seems like they're playing Barnes because he is in form. And obviously we've seen how sort of lethal Barnes can be in that double game week in terms of his scoring. So, yeah, for me, I'd go there. But to be honest, you could flip a coin between him, Murphy or Gordon. All of them are good assets depending on who does start. So, you know, it might be a case that you might want to go double defence just to sort of negate that risk. But on the free hit, you really want to just sort of take risks and go for those players that not many people will go for due to their minutes. So this could be a nice way to do that. Okay, then so moving on to the forward line, and it does sort of pick itself. Isak, I'll touch on first. Obviously, a lot of people will have him. He's going to be super high owned, over 100% EO, which means effective ownership if you don't know. At most ranks, which means obviously he'll be highly captained as well, I'd imagine, with that Ipswich at home fixture. He did haul against them in the reverse fixture earlier in the season, so yeah, it wouldn't shock me if he did it again. He has not been himself, I would say, as of late, missing a lot of big chances in the double. Obviously blanked against Aston Villa as well. He's getting taken off relatively early in most games as well. Roughly around the 70th minute we've seen over the double and last game week. Could be all game state dependent as well. Obviously all games were either wrapped up pretty early from either side in those, so yeah, it might be one to take with a pinch of salt, but it's worth noting. Obviously Mateus Cunha was back in the team, got the assist for the free kick against Manchester United by winning it. Leicester at home this week, and I sort of expect someone to have a Wolves attacker. When Cunha is in the team, it definitely does impact Strand Larsen in a negative way. So for me, I'd just be going with Mateus Cunha. You know he's on penalties as well, set pieces, when Sarabia isn't on the pitch, which is usually most of the time. And then Chris Wood to wrap things up. Obviously got his goal after 5 games blanking against Spurs. Brentford at home this week. Brentford defensively haven't been great this season. If Nottingham Forest score, usually Chris Wood is involved. I thought he looked quite good against Spurs, to be fair. He was in and amongst it. Could have had an assist for Gibbs White. Obviously had the goal ruled out before his one as well. So yeah, if you want to play Chris Wood, I wouldn't be against it. A lot of managers will own him who aren't free hitting. So maybe if you wanted to chance that, I wouldn't mind that either, and you could potentially go a bit more differential. Obviously, Raul Jimenez at Fulham or Rodrigo Muniz, whoever you think might start. But that's the biggest thing, is that obviously they are minutes risks. Is there anyone else, Ben, other than those forwards that sort of takes your fancy?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you could maybe look at Visser as well from Brentford if you think that he's going to get the returns from open play against Forest rather than sort of one maybe from a set piece from Mbeumo. But yeah, there is a limitation of options, maybe to 4 or 5 players in that striker position. I wouldn't be sort of looking too far elsewhere other than that. But yeah, I think like you said, the options Cunha and Isak, in my opinion, are locked in on pretty much everyone's free hit teams. It's just a case whether you go Wood, Strand Larsen, Raul Jimenez for me. So yeah, I think all 3 are good options. Wood showcased what he can do. One you're obviously back as well. So like I said, there's going to be an element of Wood coming off a little bit earlier than we've seen previously. But again, not the end of the world, especially sort of if he gets it wrapped up earlier on in the game.
Yeah, definitely 2 other options as well that I'd throw in there is probably Cody Gakpo and Evan Nilsson, just because they're both playing the teams that are obviously focusing on the Europa League, and Spurs and United. I think we saw anyway at the weekend a really rotated side from United, which their performance was okay, but they'll just, against better opposition they're going to struggle. And Bournemouth have been good so far this season, although seem to be on a bit of a slump at the moment. I think Evan Nilsson will always get chances, so he's a good pick. And if you wanted to go triple attack with Liverpool, obviously Cody Gakpo started against Leicester. I'd be shocked to not see him start against Spurs. I think Slot's going to go all out and play his best 11 to try and secure that league title at Anfield as well, which would be monumental for them, as they didn't win it there a few seasons ago. Okay then, so that wraps up the best free hit draft for Game Week 34. Let us know your thoughts as to who you'd be picking in those positions. It's going to be an interesting game week. Obviously mine and Ben's free hits will be revealed tomorrow, as we said earlier in the video, so make sure you stay subscribed for those.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the FPL Graduates. I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
next time. Have a good game week, everyone.
So you may rise, but you'll never make me wanna stick around you.